Well, we are in our second and final week of our series, The Hope of the World. I've loved last week, and I'm really excited about this week as we talk about what the hope of the world is. And last week, I introduced a quote by a pastor and author, Bill Hybels, when he said this. He said he believes that the local church is the hope of the world. The local church, you guys, us, that we are the hope of the world. And last week, we talked about all the different things throughout history that the church has done when it comes to the arts, or whether it comes to social care and caring for the sick, the elderly, and children, and all the advancements that the church has been a part of. Yes, we've had our blemishes, but at the same time, the good that has come in this world because of the local church is astounding. We talked about not just how it's done some pretty big things corporately, but also individually. As we talked about a few people here at Icon Church, that the local church, that you guys have had an impact on their life and how their life is forever changed because of that impact. And we're going to dive into that idea a little bit more. And to do that, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be like the teacher that gives you the answer before the test, okay? So here's the key. Here's what we're going to be coming back to today. Here's the answer for today's message, and it's this: that an invitation can change everything. Easy for me to say, I know. That an invitation can change everything. A simple invitation can change everything. And to kind of illustrate this, I want to tell a story about myself and my wife, Kelly. Now, here's the deal. If you've been here for the past few weeks, you've heard me tell a story about our household and, myself and Kelly. You heard me a few weeks ago talk about an incredibly detailed and accurate depiction about how I eat cereal. And we talked about how Kelly has this weird neurosis where it's amplified in her mind, and she just almost has an aneurysm every time. And then, and I apologize for this, you had to have her come up here and lie to you in a house of God, no less, and tell dirty, mean stories about me and lie about how I eat my cereal. So I thought, for authenticity's sake, when I tell this story, I'm going to have her tell it with me. So go ahead and give Kelly a big round of applause as she comes up here. We're going to tell the story of my invitation to marry her. Now, we're going to skip past the dating. We're going to skip past all the times she invited me out on dates, and she kept hounding me and inviting me out over and over because it makes her sound kind of desperate.
You guys see what I have to live with every day.
We'll go ahead and skip past all that. We'll skip past how actually, when we first started dating, she was ready for me to get down on one knee and propose, from day one, because again, it makes her sound crazy. So we'll skip past all of that and go to the actual night of the engagement. So Kelly, so I don't get accused of embellishing, why don't you go ahead and set the stage of how long we've been dating, kind of what's going on when we get engaged that night.
Okay, so we had been dating for about 9 months, so we had a pretty quick engagement. And you know how when you're dating, everything's an anniversary? It's like, our 1 month anniversary, our 2 week, 5 day, and 3 hour anniversary. It's like you
She did that
everything.
stuff all the time.
So anyway, it was our 9 month anniversary was coming up, and so we had planned to drive into Chicago, downtown Chicago, for the night to have a date night. And we were just coming off of a big, huge fall retreat. We were both leaders in the youth group at the church that we were a part of, and so we had this big fall retreat that we had been at all weekend. So you can imagine you're spending your weekend, with a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds. And
Not sleeping. Yes.
You're exhausted. And so, we had this date planned, but on the day that we were coming back, I was kind of like, gosh, I'm really tired. Do we want to reschedule this? Do we want to do it a different time? And
of course, I was trying to throw it off, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. If we want to reschedule, it's no big deal. In my head, I was like, oh, dear God, please, don't let her reschedule. And luckily, we didn't reschedule. Yeah, so you can go ahead and go on. So we decided on that night, I'll jump in here if you don't. So we decided to go to a restaurant. And I was a college student. So I decided to take her to the nicest restaurant that money could buy. At least
McDonald's.
The money, yeah, exactly. No, it was nicer. I have a friend who's in this church. It will remain nameless. He said his favorite restaurant is an Irish restaurant, McDonald's. So we didn't go to the Irish restaurant, McDonald's. But I went to the nicest restaurant I could afford Cheesecake Factory. Yeah, any
That's a good
Cheesecake
restaurant,
Factory? That's
right?
not bad.
Yeah.
It's not horrible. So we go to Cheesecake Factory, and I had this like really good idea to propose, right? Like I didn't want to just do like the ring, and I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So I decided what I'd do is I'd get her a gift, and I'd pretend that like what I'm doing for like the 9-month anniversary is I'm giving her this gift, and I talk about it. So I have it here with us, I bought this antique ship's compass, all right? So it's in this box, so you'd like drill it down so as it tip in the water, like the compass stays. And I talked about like wanting to always lead us in, a good direction, all that sappy stuff. I love you, it's true north, I don't know. But anyway, it was a good idea then. And my idea was I'd tape the ring to the inside of the lid, so I'd set that aside, talk about that, make it seem like that's it, and then it's like, oh, and there's one more thing, and I get down. And so that was my idea, right? The problem was I got this, I got ready for the date, I put on my coat, because it was, cold in Chicago, and I didn't realize how big this was. And it didn't fit in any of my pockets. So now I have a big problem because I have to go out in Chicago, because in Chicago you don't really drive around. You park in one spot and you leave your car and you walk the rest of the way. So what I had to do was like put it under my arm in my coat.
The whole night, y'all, the whole night.
Supernatural.
And I didn't notice it at all. I was clueless.
So like if she came up next to me, I'd be like, hey, oh, this side. Yeah, so really awkward. Really difficult to take off my coat in the restaurant. I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom with my coat on. So needless to say, we made it through. Dinner was great.
Yeah, we had dinner, and then afterwards we walk out of the restaurant, and there is a horse and carriage that's sitting there. And downtown Chicago has horse and carriage rides around Christmas time, and this was in November. And so he's like, hey, do you want to take a horse and carriage ride? And I'm like, man, big spender. I'm like, yeah. So we get in, so we take the horse and carriage ride, and it was super romantic and beautiful and all of that. And then there's this church on Michigan Avenue in downtown Chicago that has this gorgeous courtyard that every time I would go downtown, I always loved to go and walk around in there. And actually, secretly, I had like always thought it'd be so cool to get proposed to in this courtyard, but I had never ever told him that before, but he knew I loved it. And so the horse and carriage stops right in front of this courtyard. And at this point, I'm kind of going, oh man, this is, I don't know what's happening right now. And so we get out and we go in the courtyard and we walk around a little bit, and he kind of stops, and he now gets to relieve the pain in his side from the compass being shoved in his coat. And so he takes it out and he sets it down, and he hands it to me and tells me all this stuff. And so I then, at this point, I'm thinking, oh, this is just a 9-month anniversary date, and he's giving me a really sweet gift, And then he's like, that's not all. He's like, look on the underside of the lid. And so I turn it over, and there's this little black velvet bag taped to it. And I was like, oh, a little black velvet bag. And I'm like, what could be in there? And so he pulls out the ring and sweetly gets down on one knee and proposes. And I said, yes, the rest is history. So.
Okay, hold on. Now time out.
What?
That's not exactly how it went, okay? What really happened is all of those things, yes, the bag, the ring. So then I get down on one knee, I propose, all the sweet stuff. You know what she does? As I'm on one knee, she laughs. She starts laughing as I'm on. This is not a position you want to be in as a guy, and watching a woman laugh. Just FYI, if that happens, and I'm like, an answer might be nice anytime, and then she said yes. And
you can't control your reaction when you're nervous. Like I don't.
Yeah, and I thought my life was ending that moment right there. I was like, oh, cool. I thought she'd laugh. That's what I was hoping for. And so anyway, she laughs at me. She does say yes, and that is the whole story. So then we go home, and it was a great night.
Oh, okay, hold on. He's totally leaving out, though. So after he proposes...
Okay, here's the deal. We don't have much time. We don't have a lot of time. It's not your day.
No. Hey,
it's
you
my
gave me the mic.
Cut her mic.
You gave me the mic and invited me up here.
Cut it.
So
No, I'm just kidding.
So, it's time to leave now, and it's late. It's probably like 11 o'clock by now. And you got to realize, downtown Chicago, a lot of their parking lots and parking garages look very similar. And
they are identical. There are thousands of them.
And so we start to walk back to the car, and Dan doesn't remember where we parked, and neither do I. So we literally walked around downtown for about 2.5 hours before we finally found the car.
In the freezing cold, mind you.
In the freezing cold.
And I've spent every one of my dollars, so we can't get a taxi to drive around and find it. I am now broke. So
but at the end of the day, I'm just, I'm looking at my ring going, so everything was
it's the only
fine.
thing I had to say.
It was all good.
So
can I, is that
that's
good?
it. You can go ahead and go. Why don't you give Kelly a round of applause? See, and the idea behind this was that one invitation changed the rest of our lives. Her response to my invitation of marriage changed our lives for the rest of our lives. But here's the thing, and here's what I want to propose today, is that invitation is a part of all of our lives. I think all of us could go back through our lives and think about different invitations that we've had and different responses to invitations we've been given and how that's drastically affected our life. I think, in fact, we could probably go back and tell our own stories through the lens and through the filter of invitation. The jobs, the schools, great parts of our life happen because of an invitation. Just this week on social media, I saw one of our high school seniors accepted an invitation to attend Texas A&M University and be an Aggie. Absolutely, whoop, and all of those things. And for her and for so many people like that, that's the invitation of a lifetime, just a dream come true. For some of the rest of you guys, you can't imagine paying money to go to College Station. That's just the invitation you'd never want, right? So hook 'em or something like that. We get some booze by the Aggies, that's right. So invitation shapes our life if you think about it. And maybe you don't want to think about it, but every single one of us here, you are on this planet, you are in this world because of an invitation. Think about it? Maybe you don't want to think about it. Okay, at some point, there was an invitation to go someplace with fun and some things happen, and here we are, right? We're all here because of an invitation, and hopefully it was several invitations of dates and, all that good stuff, but we're here because of an invitation. You see, and what I believe is this power of invitation, it's incredibly powerful. That every single one of us have the ability to help change the course and the direction of somebody else's life. You see, no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are, no matter what your net worth is, no matter where you come from, no matter if you're 11 or 81, you have the ability, you have the power to change the trajectory of someone's entire life. And all it takes is an invitation. You have the power to change the trajectory of someone's entire life, and all it takes is an invitation. Now, some of you might be putting it together why I'm talking about this at church on a Sunday morning. We're talking about the power of invitation, inviting someone to church. Now let me set the stage a little bit. You see, my job, what my goal is to create an environment where people come in and they feel welcome, they feel loved. And we have a great team, the volunteers around this place and the kids department, the host teams. Our goal in life is to create an incredible environment for people to come to. And our mission in this church, I want to be very clear, our mission is to help people become more like Jesus. This is everything we're trying to do. And here's why, because we believe, even regardless of what you believe about Jesus, that if you begin to become more like him, your life will become better. You'll become a better parent, a better father, mother, husband, wife, child, worker, employer. That regardless of what you believe about Jesus, that if you become more like him, your life will become better. How do we know that? And why do we emphasize that? Because honestly, the very first followers of Jesus, that's what happened for them. If you read the Gospels carefully, these followers of Jesus, these disciples, didn't believe he was the Son of God early on. They just started following him. And it was through that pursuit of becoming more like Jesus that they became aware that he is the Son of God, sent to save the world. And I believe that if we do that, if we do everything we can to become more like Jesus, that we'll make that same discovery. But here's the deal. I get it. Inviting people to church, it can be weird. it can be awkward. I'll say of myself as the pastor, sometimes it's hard for me to invite people to church. Now, for me, it takes on all these other weird things because I'm usually the one up here. So it's like, hey, want to come to church and listen to me talk for a while? Like, that's weird, you know? Like, but that's something that I have to overcome. And I have to realize that, you know what? It's not about me. It's not about just the band or just the kids workers or just this communicator. It's about all of us together being the church, being the hope of the world together. So that's something that I've had to overcome and I've had to get past. But there's other things that you face. There's stuff like honestly, inviting people to church, it can be scary sometimes. It's like, what if they say no? And it's like, oh, that was awkward. See you at the water cooler? You know, like what do you do after that? Or what if they say yes? And you sit in your chair and you kind of keep looking back at the door, looking at the clock, and maybe you're waiting out there for them and they don't show up. It can be scary. And also, it can be kind of intimidating. Our culture has made it such a way that sometimes inviting people to church and trying to get people to believe what you believe, or proselytizing people, like that's not cool. Like you shouldn't do that. But if you really love people, wouldn't you want their life to be better? Wouldn't you want their life to be one that becomes more like Jesus, that becomes a better way of living? Isn't that what we would want? But you see, it's not just those things that sometimes hinder us from inviting people, or even from the invitation carrying the weight that it should carry. See, I believe that the key to a powerful invitation is actually consistent investment. See, sometimes we separate these two things, and today I want to tie these together. That it's important, yes, to invite, but it's really important to invest and to invite. I mean, imagine if I would have invited Kelly to marry me without investing into our relationship through dating, and I just walked up and said, hey, will you marry me? Would have gone bad, right? Like that would, actually for Kelly, she would have said yes. I mean, she had the hots for me for a long time. But for most people, that would go bad for. Right? It's the consistent investment over time that makes the invitation powerful. And to illustrate that a little bit, I want to tell you about a few friends of mine. First of all, I want to tell you about a friend of mine named Taka. This is Taka Iguchi, a good friend of mine. Taka had the opportunity out of high school to go to business school at University of Arizona. And he really wanted to, really thought about it, but he decided to spend his life investing into other people. And he went to a Bible school and eventually went on staff there and began teaching. And what he was great at is investing into young people's life. He was a part of the youth leadership team, and he led a small group, and he started investing into people's lives. And really, this story kind of starts with Taka, so I'll go ahead and put Taka up here. So Taka began to invest into people's life, and one of the people that he invested into about 16 years ago is he started investing into this 18-year-old kid. And this 18-year-old kid was fresh out of high school, could be a bit of a bonehead sometimes, liked to joke around and mess around. And this high schooler that just graduated, his name is Dan. And you guys know what I look like. So this is 18-year-old Dan. Stupid look on his face and cockeyed hat. Nothing has really changed, right? This is me in about 90% of pictures. So Taka started investing into me. And he started pouring into me and teaching me what it looks like to follow Jesus. And not only that, is I became a leader in the small group that he ran. And he said, hey, listen, why don't you come with me to some basketball games for some high schoolers that are in our group? And why don't you come with me to some football games? And I'd watch him like walk in, and I'd walk in with him, and all the kids in the student section would be like, Taka, what's up, man, Taka? And I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? You know, but he had created such inroads with these high schoolers, just investing into their lives, listening to them when they had problems, and talking to them about their parents and the relationships, and just becoming a part of their life. And he taught me how to do that. And what I did is I started investing into some people. And one of the people I invested into was a 15-year-old at the time. And this 15-year-old wasn't a Christian at the time, wasn't following Jesus. His sister, her name's Talitha, and she was a Christian. She was a part of our small group. And she was real consistent. And through Talitha, I met her brother, Jonathan. This is Jonathan. Some of you guys know Jonathan. He's a part of Icon Church. Somebody whistled for him, hoping it's his wife. This is Jonathan, and at 15 years old, I started building a friendship with Jonathan. Now, the thing is, Jonathan and his buddies, he played football and wrestled for a couple matches before he quit. And, I would go to those matches and I would go to those games and I began investing into his life and listening when he had problems and talking to him about different things happening at school. And he always had such a huge heart for his friends. And I'd watch that and what they loved to do, I'd try to see if I could be a part of that. And we'd play football together and that's what they loved. And another thing that they loved is this was in like the heyday of MTV, Tom Green Show, Jackass, some other shows where they did dumb stuff all the time. So that's what they loved to do. So I would go do dumb stuff, and we would fall down on crutches in front of stores and watch people run, and it was horrible, but made really funny videos. And shoot each other with paintball guns, all the stuff they teach you in Bible school. I mean, they taught us all this stuff. There's classes on this. So I began investing into Jonathan's life. And over time, Jonathan eventually became a follower of Jesus. And he ended up coming to the Bible school that I was eventually leading in Austin, Texas, and went through the Bible school there and came on staff and became my assistant director and met his wife Christina there, and they got married. And eventually he came here to Icon Church to help start this church from the ground up. And when he did that, he had to get a job just like everyone else had to, and he worked more odd jobs than anyone I know. He delivered phone books like you do because we need phone books now. He did that. He worked pest control for a while. And eventually, he got his realtor's license. When he got his realtor's license, he began to work as an apartment locator here in town, which in San Marcos can be a good job. So he started doing that, and he and another person from Icon, Tyler Zimmerman, the guy you saw in the announcement video, not the bald one, they started working at this apartment locator company. And Apartment Experts, in case you're looking, if you need anyone, they can go find them afterwards. But at Apartment Experts, they started working there, and what was really important to them is they knew what it meant to invest into people's lives. And they decided that their work life was integrally important to their faith, so they decided to live out their life at work just the way they would at church. And they were gracious and loving and kind and not hurtful and sarcastic, and this made an impact on the workers around them. And one of the people it made an impact on was their boss, Catherine. This is Catherine and her husband, Nassim. Catherine was the boss over there, and she noticed this, and I talked to her on the phone this week, and she said this. She said, there was just something about the way they lived their lives. There was something different about them, a grace that they walked with, a kindness that they had, and I looked at their life and I said, I want what they have. It made an impact on her life, and she began to notice this. And Catherine had gone to Texas State, and she had gone to church years ago, but hadn't been in church for years and years, and she noticed this impact, and over time, that investment made a difference in Catherine's life. And she decided she wanted to know more about this church that they were a part of, and she started coming to Icon Church because of Jonathan and because of Tyler's investment. Her and her eventual husband became a part of Icon Church, started following Jesus, and have been an integral part of what's happening here. But you see, Catherine knew something too, that what had been invested into her shouldn't stop with her. And when I say that her life shifted and changed, that grace that she saw in Jonathan and Tyler began to exude from her life. And in a simple Craigslist post about helping people find an apartment, she got connected with a couple, Teddy and Ashley. Now, Teddy and Ashley were new to the area. They had no family, no friends, didn't know a single person in town, were 1,000 miles from home. Teddy was going to Texas State, and Ashley was working, doing everything she could to kind of make ends meet. And they didn't have enough money for an initial down payment, so they were working with Catherine. They were talking, and as Catherine got to know Teddy and Ashley, she found out that they were actually living in a tent, showering wherever they could. They were homeless because they couldn't afford to get into an apartment complex. You see, that grace that Catherine saw, she wasn't okay with that. So when she found out about that, she said, you know what? I want you to come live with me. You come live with me, and we're going to figure this out. And she opened her home to Teddy and Ashley. And because of that grace and because of that investment into their lives, things began to change in their lives as well. They started coming to Icon Church and found out about what was happening here, and their lives began to change as well. You see, that initial investment that Taka made into a kid named Dan 16 years ago had an impact on Teddy and Ashley, but it didn't stop there. See, Teddy and Ashley started coming to Icon Church, and they got connected with another couple, Zach and Sarah. Now, Zach and Sarah lived in the same apartment complex as Teddy and Ashley, and Ashley would tell you that she hasn't been to Bible college. She doesn't know everything there is to know about the Bible. And when I asked her, how did you initially meet Zach and Sarah, she goes, actually, because of our dogs. I walked my dog a lot, and our dogs seemed to love each other, so they would play all the time. So what do you do when your dogs are playing together? You begin to talk to the other person. And Ashley found out that Sarah had grown up in the church, that she was a Christian, but Zach had some experiences in the church that kind of turned him off, and at the time he would describe himself as an atheist or at least an agnostic that was far from God. But through that relationship, again, Ashley knew what it meant to invite people. So she invited Sarah and Zach to church here at Icon. She knew that Sarah was looking for a church, so she invited them, and Zach came along, not really expecting a whole lot, but just came because Sarah was there. What happened over time, you guys did what you guys do. You made them feel welcome. You loved them. You accepted them. You became friends with them. And they felt welcome, and they felt like this is a place that they can belong. For Zach, before he even believed. I still remember the time that I got the email from Zach saying, hey, can we meet? I want to talk about, I heard you talk about baptism. I want to find out what this whole baptism thing is all about. Can we meet? I remember sitting in a coffee shop talking to Zach, and if you know Zach and talk to him for very long, you'll figure out real quickly he's very, very, very smart. The church had done a disservice to Zach, and through his questions growing up, didn't answer those questions real well and didn't really engage with him and help him wrestle through those questions. But because of you guys, Zach ended up becoming a Christian, found his faith in Jesus, and is a part of Icon Church today. Here's the deal. This is why the local church is the hope of the world. Because through investment, lives can change. Through a simple invitation, everything can change. That person's life can change, and further lives can change. You see, earlier I told you that you have the power to change the trajectory of someone's entire life. All it takes is an invitation. You see, it's actually a lot bigger than that. What I should have said is you have the power to change the trajectory of dozens of lives. All it takes is an invitation. All it takes is you inviting them to this environment. You know what my job is? You know what the staff's job is? You know what all the volunteers' job is? We want to make this an engaging environment. We want this to make sense. We want people to feel free to laugh and be themselves, and they don't feel like they have to act a certain way to come in this door. They don't have to believe a certain thing to be here. It's our job. We want to set up the date. It's your job to get them here, to invite them here. Say, hey, listen, I go to this awesome church, and I'd love you to come and check it out. And I get it. Invitation, there's risk involved. It's scary, it's intimidating, it's awkward. But I want you to know that the risk of invitation might be great. But the risk of not asking is even greater. You see, what if Taka decided to not invest into some dumb 18-year-old punk kid? He had enough things to do. He had enough things to keep him busy. He had a lot of work to do. Probably the last thing he wanted to do sometimes was invest into that guy. But he did. And because of that, look at the difference that made. And this is a microcosm of what happens all the time. This is one story, one line. See, what I know is throughout this church, there's dozens of lines spreading out from here. And because of an invitation, all the way down, the impact that was made, Zach would not have found faith in Jesus without this kind of investment. So yeah, the risk is great. I get it. But the risk of not inviting is even greater. And we're going to do everything we can to make it real easy next week. You heard it in the announcements these past few weeks, and I want to explain to you just a little bit of what's happening. We're calling it Football Sunday. So here's to help create a great environment. Here's what we want you to do. 1, show up. 1, show up. 2, show up a little early. So when you come, because guests come on time and we're used to it, so we come in, wear a jersey. It doesn't even have to be a football jersey. I love it. There's a couple in our church that they used to ride BMX bikes, and they wore their like BMX jerseys one time. Like, yeah, do it. Ping pong's your thing, whatever, like wear a ping pong shirt. I don't care. Like, wear something that's going to engage people. So do that so they feel in, they feel welcome. The majority of the service is gonna be a video. Who can't just watch a video? You're gonna hear from different NFL players talk about their faith and talk about what it's like to walk out their faith in the NFL under the spotlight of being famous. You'll hear them talk about that. It'll be so easy. We've gone out of our way. We've made connections with Tyler Jones, the starting quarterback of Texas State University. He's gonna be here next week in person. And I'm gonna interview him and ask him questions about what it's like he's a Christian and a strong Christian. What's it like to be a Christian at a D1 school playing football with a bunch of guys that probably aren't? What's that like? What's life in college been like? So we'll interview him, we'll play that video, and I'll come up real briefly at the end and close it out. It's gonna be so simple. What your job is to do is to get people here. You invite them. You know there's this crazy statistic. It says that 82% of unchurched or de-churched people say that if a friend or someone they know invites them to church, they'd attend. 82%. 82% of the people you know that aren't in church would come if you just invite them. So all you have to do is invite 2 people. Odds are at least one of them are gonna show up. So here's what we'd like to do. I'm not just putting this all on you, because guess what? Just like you're a part of the church, I'm a part of the church. I'm inviting people next Sunday. I've got a list of 11 people that I'm going to invite. If I can invite 11, hopefully 8 of them show up. And I'll do whatever I can. Man, if we got to pick them up, if I got to promise them, hey, bribe them, I'll take you out to lunch afterwards. If all of them say yes to me, I might take cash out of the offering bucket as it goes by. Who knows? Like, we'll figure it out, right? Like, figure it out. I'll sit in the back so the bucket has time to pass, all right? Like, find a way. Bribe them. Do whatever you got to do. Invite them. Get them here. You get them here. And the service and God, the Holy Spirit will do the rest. And who knows what might happen because of your one invitation. Invest in their life. I'm not telling you you have to invest for all this time before. Listen, there's people you've already made investments into. You're already friends with. You already have relationship. You're already coworkers, classmates. Invite them. So here's what we're going to do. I want us all literally to write something down right now. However you give yourself a reminder, if you text yourself, email yourself, write on your hand, put it in an app, I don't know. But I want you to write down 3 names. 3 names of people you want to invite to church next Sunday. I've got my list. I've got it in my phone. I want you to write down wherever. Put it somewhere where you can see their names. In a moment, we're going to pray over these names, and you're going to invite them. Because here's the thing. We believe that the way of Jesus is the best possible way to live. Regardless of what they believe about him, if they can become a little bit more like him, their life will become better, and they'll say, man, there's something to that. It might come back, and who knows whose life might be changed. As you write those down, I'm going to go ahead and pray over you and pray over those names. God, we thank you so much for this time. God, I thank you for Icon Church. God, that I get to be a part of it. It's so incredible. It's so awesome. God, thank you that I get to be a part of this. God, I thank you for every single person here. God, we pray over these names. Every single one of these names that are being written down, that are being thought about, that are being emailed and jotted to ourselves, we pray for these names. God, we ask for favor when we invite them. God, I pray that this community, Hays County, would be a different place because of Icon Church. The investment that we make into each other, into this community. God, I thank you for all these things because I thank you that we get to be a part of the hope of the world. We pray these things in your name. And everybody said, amen.